Taiwan bids farewell to its oldest fighter jet. Why Taiwan's U.S.-trained troops aren't keen to enlist back home.
这一部分违反了职业安全卫生法第6条第1项规定。
A freak accident that should have been prevented. Plus, Taiwan's economy at a crossroads.
I think Taiwan needs to find other sources of growth.
Hello and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao with 30 minutes of the latest from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's military is showing off its new jet trainer while getting ready to say goodbye to its oldest aircraft. Jaime Okan reports from eastern Taiwan.
Taiwan says farewell to one of its oldest fighter jets. For almost 50 years, these American-made F-5s, also known as Tigers, were used to not only defend the skies above Taiwan, but also to train the country's fighter pilots.
说要换装，其实对我而言，只是换一个地方，然后飞不一样的飞机。那准备跟学习的方式，其实都是一样的，努力付出。
But this goodbye marks a new era for Taiwan's Air Force. Replacing the F-5 are these new domestically made advanced jet trainers. They're unique in that they use a state-of-the-art simulator to help pilots get a feel for the variety of jets Taiwan has in service.
With the advanced, flight control and all that heads-up display, it's easier for us to simulate like a real enemy and to have our training.
The jet trainer, or Brave Eagle as it's nicknamed, it's part of Taiwan's efforts to modernize its military. And because they're locally made, Taiwan is able to not only cut costs, but also boost its domestic defense industry. This Air Force base in Taidong is home to one of the country's largest training facilities. And it's also going to be home to 66 of these brand new jet trainers. Now, the military hopes that these new aircraft and the technology that's inside them will help better train its Air Force pilots. Taiwan's Air Force is under immense pressure as it scrambles regularly to intercept Chinese warplanes flying near the country. Part of the decision to retire the F-5 was due to safety concerns, as the military has been dealing with a string of recent accidents, losing several aircraft and pilots in the past 3 years. That's why analysts say the move to retire the F-5 is the right decision.
台湾的 F5 其实并没有跟其他国家一样有做一个 upgrade， 也就是它的 jet 那个弹射椅没有升级，所以一旦出现飞行员操作失误或者是机械故障的话，飞行员可能就比较没有这个逃生的机会。
On top of the modernization efforts, Taiwan also hopes the new aircraft can help solve a pilot shortage. New recruits that have already flown the jet trainer say it's much easier to handle the craft, something that should benefit a strained force. But regardless of the difficulty, trainees like this one are committed to doing whatever it takes to get ready for the worst.
We are trying to be 100% ready if there is any possible war.
All 66 of the Brave Eagle jet trainers are set to be delivered by 2026. And for young pilots like Kai, the next step is making the transition from a jet trainer to a fully armed fighter jet. Joseph Wu and Jaime Okan in Taidong for TaiwanPlus.
Every year, Taiwan's military pays hundreds of thousands of US dollars to send some of its most promising young officers to train in US military academies. But this investment only pays off if they stay in the forces after getting back to Taiwan. Bryn Thomas reports.
Whether it's learning to work together or learning to lead, the best and the brightest of Taiwan's military are looking to the United States for help. By sending some of its officers to military academies like West Point and Georgetown, Taiwan hopes to improve its military. It's a big investment, one that will only pay off if Taiwan can hold on to its brass after they return. But experts say problems in the military push talent away.
因为不是组织文化不好嘛，在军队里面他根本讲话不算话，17点军校，他的学费4年下来都要花费我们国家1000万。我们要把最优秀的人才来办教育，国军才会强大。
The situation has some in Taiwan's government worried. The Control Yuan, Taiwan's government watchdog, called on the Defense Ministry to do more to retain their top talent in a report released this week. In response, members of Taiwan's armed forces say they've put plans in place to retain foreign educated officers after they return.
经管的规划上，或者是在服役年限的这个年限的调升的这种方法的研究上，或者是在整体的包含一些理念的沟通跟座谈等等这些方面都会采取一些配套的措施。
But whether it's domestic or foreign trained talent, the military's inability to hold on to its top leadership is a problem that could impact Taiwan's security, and one with no easy solutions. Andy Xue and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
To learn more about Taiwan's military retention, our reporter Sam Hui spoke to Ray Song, a security expert from the Graduate Institute of International Affairs and Strategic Studies of Tamkang University.
Why is Taiwan sending its military officers to study in U.S. military academies?
不管是西点军校或者是美国的维吉尼亚军校，其实最重要的目的就是说，让我们的这个官士兵在战术战法上可以更为精进。对，那到赴美受训的这些官士兵，不管是陆海空三军，那他们回到国内之后，就是将这些经验传入到部队，并且让部队在战术战法上更为精进，同时也可以了解说当前世界局势是怎么应对所谓的军事冲突的。
Why does Taiwan have trouble holding on to its experienced soldiers?
第一个就是说，我们的这个现在的这个年轻一辈的，就是现役军人，他的这个自我意识相对来说比我们父辈或者是我们祖辈来的高涨。对，那在这样的情况之下，他可能就是说，对于部队的这个生活，他没有办法长期的适应，他很容易就是产生一个所谓的这种退伍的这个意愿。第二个原因就是说，我认为说我们社会大众对于现役军人的这个态度上，我认为还需要再精进、再加强。原因在于说，其实台湾社会长期以来对于职业军人的态度，并不是说很尊重。那在这样的情况之下，所有现役军人他的这工作心态，他会觉得说，我从事这份工作，我的荣誉感跟很容易被社会大众给忽视掉。
What can Taiwan do to improve the retention rate of officers after they return from the U.S.?
今天养军队或是维持军队的存在的目的，就是在于说国家安全，而国家安全其实是维系在不管是现役部队也好，还是说一般老百姓也好。那第一个，老百姓除了要尊重军人之外，我认为在我们的这个我们的国军部队里面，就是说让我们的军人在从事这份工作的时候，也可以有一个所谓荣誉感，并且将这个荣誉感可以感染到，就是说现役军人的这个眷属。我觉得这才是国军想办法就是提升军人长期留用的这个目的，并且让更多的这个有志青年愿意投入军旅生涯的一个目的，这样子。
That was Ray Song from the Graduate Institute of International Affairs and Strategic Studies speaking to our reporter Sam Hui. Taiwan's economy is having its worst year for growth since the financial crisis. The government predicts the economy will grow by just over 1.4% in 2023, the lowest since 2009. Business boomed in 2021 as demand for Taiwan's electronics surged, but since then, growth has slowed. Officials blame high global inflation and geopolitical tensions. For more on Taiwan's slow economic growth, our reporter Stash Butler spoke to economist Alicia Garcia Herrero.
Officials in Taiwan are pinning the blame for slow growth on things outside the country, like global inflation. So that kind of begs the question, how much of what happens to Taiwan's economy is actually in the government's control?
It is quite true that a lot of what's happening is the semiconductor cycle, which has been unfavorable for a year and a half at least. But there's also this idea that I think Taiwan needs to find new sectors, not only the semiconductor sector. So if they had diversified the economy before, they wouldn't need to blame the external environment. In other words,
has the government done enough to diversify?
I don't think they have. An industry that they could actually have started developed during COVID, the tourism industry. We don't know whether, global manufacturing is going to shrink as many things because of the digitalization globally. So what about services? What about tourism? What about digital services as well? Not only hardware. So I think these are things that Taiwan has to start thinking about.
How much will officials in Taiwan be looking at, some of the economic worries coming out of China and worrying about the effect that will have on the economy here?
So, well, we know China is going to continue to decelerate slightly. But of course, it affects Taiwan because Taiwan is still so dependent on exports into the mainland. Because we know this is structural, that China will continue to slow down. I think Taiwan needs to find other sources of growth in the southbound strategy, kind of rethink it, foster it further. India, I think all of these high growth places in the surroundings of Taiwan should be the aim of their trade policy.
That was Alicia Garcia Herrero, Chief Economist for Asia Pacific at Natixis, speaking to Stash Butler. The average mortgage term in Taiwan has hit a record high. Taiwan's housing is some of the most expensive in the world relative to incomes. With prices growing faster than wages, home buyers are taking out longer loan repayment periods. The average mortgage term for the third quarter was 25 years and 4 months, up a full year from a year earlier. In the last 24 hours, Taiwan has seen 2 more accidents at construction sites, one of them fatal. They're the latest in a string of mishaps, casting a spotlight on Taiwan's workplace safety culture and its failure to enforce safety rules. John Van Triest has more.
By the time firefighters got here, it was too late. A cave-in at this construction site in the southern city of Kaohsiung buried a worker alive on Tuesday. All that was left to do was to dig the body out. It took the firefighters an hour. After reviewing security camera footage from the site, officials figured out what had happened. This, it turns out, was not a freak accident.
初步调查呢，是发现雇主在从事露天开挖作业时，没有依法设置挡土支撑，这部分违反了《职业安全卫生法》第6条第1项规定。
Officials have ordered work to stop and promised to prosecute those responsible. But the maximum fine the company can face is less than $10,000. And this wasn't the only construction mishap that day caused by workplace safety failures. A crane collapse just outside Taipei injured its operator. Officials are still investigating the cause, but they say they'll fine the construction firm up to $3,000 for failing to install proper equipment. Poor safety at construction sites is a recurring problem. This year, improper practices and violations of the law have toppled apartment blocks in Taipei and sent a crane tumbling 30 stories in the central city of Taichung, hitting a passing metro car and killing 1 person. Officials say that while these incidents involve different violations of different laws and so aren't directly related, more can be done to ensure safety. And they say more is being done right now.
像我们也会参考一些国外，尤其日本这一块，我们也跟他进行合作，其实协协。然后最近我们会进行更进一步的一个探讨，他一个有没有更也要我们法规来做一个精进的一个作为，我们会吸取他们的一些经验来做我们的修正。
But in the end, only Taiwan's government can solve Taiwan's problems. And how well it can put what it learns from overseas into practice will be a matter of life or death. Howard Zhang and John Van Triest for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, after 17 days in the dark, the men who made it home safe.
Start your weekend with a cup of coffee and a moment to reflect on what happened this week.
Hello and welcome.
We've got you covered, from defense and politics to high tech and the arts.
Not just to Taiwan, the whole world is watching.
You make the coffee, we make the news. Here's what happened on TaiwanPlus.
I'm Joy Sun in Bangkok, Thailand, and you're watching TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world. Charted by the freest country in Asia.
5
4, 3, 2.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Taiwanese semiconductor giant TSMC.
Public buses to be electric by 2030. A mission that begins with listening.
And telling the stories of Taiwan.
In Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Drawing insight from original thinkers.
And sharing it with the world. TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Officials in India say dozens of construction workers have been rescued from a collapsed underground tunnel in the Himalayan mountains. Louise Watt has more.
This was the moment when rescuers pulled out the first of dozens of construction workers trapped underground in northern India for 17 days. It was a welcome ending to a story that gripped the nation. Many of the workers' relatives had camped out at the site for days. 41 men were trapped, migrant labourers from across India. They were building a tunnel, part of a controversial multi-million-dollar project to connect Hindu pilgrimage sites. The men worked despite concerns that heavy construction could bring more damage to a landslide-prone region. The tunnel collapsed on November the 12th, trapping the men. Over the following days, food, water and oxygen were piped in. The rescue hit setbacks. A machine rescuers were using to reach the men broke down. In the end, they had to dig by hand. But after 17 days of uncertainty, jubilation. Praise for the rescuers and for the trapped workers whose courage and patience now serve as an inspiration to the millions who followed their plight. Luffy Lee and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
The UN's annual climate summit is kicking off this week, and cutting fossil fuels is a top priority. But with the United Arab Emirates, one of the world's biggest oil producers, playing host, some doubt progress will be made. Sally Inson has more.
Preparing to tackle what's been called humanity's biggest challenge. The UAE's Sultan Al Jaber will be welcoming representatives from over 200 countries to Dubai for the United Nations 28th Annual Climate Change Summit. Al Jaber has been a controversial choice to preside over this year's COP28 gathering, as he's also the chief executive of the state-run oil company, one of the largest oil producers in the world.
I want everyone to know that we have the full political will to support a successful COP28.
But many parties to the conference remain doubtful. At the top of the agenda for the two-week summit, phasing out fossil fuels like coal, gas and oil, the main cause of the climate crisis, and fast-tracking the move to clean energy, which Al Jaber says he is well placed to push for, as he's also the chairman of the UAE's state-owned renewable energy firm. Just days before the summit opening, though, increased skepticism. The BBC reported that leaked documents showed the host nation planned to use the summit to further energy deals with other countries, allegations not denied by the UAE, which said that, quote, private meetings are private.
Nobody has any commitment to phasing out fossil fuels, which is causing the vast majority of our climate crisis. And that's exactly why they should not be allowed into these conferences, and we need a very clean slate for actual negotiations to happen.
And with parties needing to make decisions unanimously, there are concerns that COP28 may not achieve what it sets out to, with countries bringing their own economic interests to the table, a problem which has previously delayed a loss and damage fund, which would funnel money from rich countries to poorer ones more vulnerable to climate disasters. If they still can't reach a consensus in Dubai, it could jeopardize the goals for global action.
Nunca foi tão urgente retomar e ampliar essa cooperação. Os desafios da nossa era e as oportunidades que surgem demandam ação conjunta.
Adding to the urgency is that 2023 is set to be the planet's hottest year on record. To turn the needle on the climate crisis, countries will need to drastically cut their emissions, and these talks will be the first assessment of progress since the landmark Paris Climate Treaty, signed by nearly 200 countries in 2015. And if progress fails to match what's needed, it could spell further catastrophe for the planet. Scott Huang and Sally Jensen for TaiwanPlus.
British airline Virgin Atlantic has completed the world's first long-haul flight using 100% sustainable jet fuel. The flight took off from London and landed in New York, carrying the airline's founder, Richard Branson. Carriers are looking to move away from conventional jet fuel to cut carbon emissions. But sustainable fuel is expensive and the materials to make it are in short supply. Virgin's CEO says he's optimistic.
The feedstock in this case was just oils coming from either animal fat or cooking oil, used cooking oil. But that's just the first generation. So this is really a pathway to showing how to decarbonize long-haul aviation.
An old Thai River festival is getting an eco-friendly update. The traditional version left the country's waters filled with debris, but as Laurel Stewart reports, people are now finding more environmentally friendly ways to keep the festival alive.
Symbols of gratitude, these flower-filled boats, known as kratong, are going on a journey to the sea. Thailand's Loy Krathong Festival is celebrated on the first full moon of the Thai lunar calendar's 12th month. And launching these rafts is an offering to the river goddess, thanking her for the water she provides and asking forgiveness for polluting or wasting water. It's no small event. Bangkok officials say this year attendees released 600,000 kratong into the city's main river. But they float down into the sea, strewing debris along the banks and blocking waterways. Now some locals are finding new ways to celebrate the river festival without impacting the environment. At this canal in Bangkok, people are making digital kratong. They're drawing personalised vessels and then scanning them to be digitalised. The colourful offerings are then projected onto the canal and participants can make a wish as they watch their creation float along the water.
You come here the same place, you get the feeling the same one, and you see people, I think people are going to accept that. And so many people like this project.
ค่ะแต่อันนี้อาจจะยังเล็กอยู่แต่เราก็ยังสามารถช่วยถ้าหลังจากนี้ค่ะก็คือเดี๋ยวพอเขาจะรู้สึกถึงความแตกต่างแล้วระหว่างปีที่แล้วที่เขาหย่อนกระทงลงไปกระทงจริงกับปีนี้ที่จะเป็นเวอร์ชันดิจิตอลค่ะเขาน่าจะทราบหลังจากตอนที่เขาได้ลงมือทำจริงๆแล้วค่ะ
But some say the tradition doesn't need digitalising and can continue as long as the debris is cleaned up properly afterwards. It's the second year that clean-up groups have taken to the water to collect kratong after the festival. They want to preserve the tradition while reducing the environmental impact.
ก็มีวีโต้มาว่าน่าจะรณรงค์เลิกไม่ได้หรอกเพราะมันเป็นวัฒนธรรมของเรามาตั้งแต่สมัยกรุงสุโขทัยแล้วแล้วถ้าพูดถึงผลพลอยได้เนี่ยเฉพาะงานลอยกระทงแค่คืนเดียวทำรายได้กับประเทศนับเป็นพันล้านเนี่ยงั้นก็ถือว่าต้องสู้กันไปแต่สู้ในลักษณะนี้ลอยก็เก็บลอยได้ก็เก็บได้เงี้ย
These monks collect the floating boats, which are made of banana bark, and then process them into animal feed. It's another sustainable approach to the tradition.
กาบกล้วยที่เราบดขยะแล้วเอามาผสมกันเนี่ยทำให้ไก่ของเราเนี่ยเจริญเติบโตลูกไข่ก็ใหญ่ข้างในไข่แดงก็ใหญ่กว่าไข่ทั่วไป
The clash between tradition and environment is familiar to people in Taiwan. The Lantern Festival is held on the 15th day of the Lunar New Year, when sky lanterns are sent into the air with written wishes. But traditional lanterns fall back to earth, littering the ground and posing a fire hazard. A newer lantern design allows them to completely burn up in the sky without pieces falling back to Earth. And organisers hold interactive light installations for people to experience the festival's magic without launching a lantern. These traditions have long held meaning for the people who take part, and with a little creativity, they may continue to do so for the generations that follow. Justin Wu and Laurel Stewart for TaiwanPlus.
Endangered black-faced spoonbills have started to arrive in Taiwan on their annual migration. The wading birds fly south from their breeding grounds off the Korean peninsula and winter here. Some of the birds have been tagged to track their migratory habits. One individual, S50, was tagged in 2013 and winters every year in Taiwan. This spoonbill would usually be spotted in Jiayi and Tainan in Taiwan's southwest. This year, it's been spotted in Taitung on the country's east coast. And thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Before we go, check out these shots of Heping Island Geopark on the northern coast of Taiwan. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. For more stories from Taiwan and around the rest of the world, please visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow us on social media.